Today on DX Central from the Workbench, we're going to take this roll of 500 feet of 14 gauge stranded copper wire and we're going to turn it into this. A 22 by 65 foot behemoth known as the KAZ antenna. Highly directional, tons of gain, and an absolute beast for medium wave DX. Stay tuned. You know, you've probably heard me mention quite a bit here on my YouTube channel and over on Twitter, twitter.com/DXCentral, about KAZ antennas and how great they are for AMDX. And they truly are remarkable. I have two in my backyard, both about 12 feet high by 48 feet wide. And they're highly directional, there's lots of gain, especially when I pair them with my Wellbrook FLG100LN preamps. But there's always been something a little bit that's been bothering me about them, is that the 12 by 48s that I have are a little on the small side. Ideally, a KAZ antenna needs to be somewhere about 60 to 65 feet in width. If you're doing a DKAZ or double KAZ antenna, you're going to want to have that in the 120 to 140 foot range. So 48 feet was doing it, but not quite getting it exactly where I wanted it to be. So I did some looking and some sketching out some plans in my backyard, took out the tape measure, did some measuring, and I realized that if I cleared out some space in my backyard in this back corner, I could actually increase the size of my antennas to 65 foot length KAZs. That's a full 65 footer. That's the full size KAZ. And additionally, I had originally stuck to a 1:4 aspect ratio. All the literature that I had read at the time said 1:4 aspect ratio worked the best. So for every 4 feet in width, you have a foot in height. So for my 48 footer, I kept a 12 foot height. However, in talking with several other DXers, they were seeing amazing results with 22 foot height apex. So I went out and I bought myself some of these. These are fiberglass telescopic kite poles, basically. I got them from a company called Kitty Hawk. I'll put a link in the description below. And they extend out to a full 22 feet, and they're made to be in the wind. So no guy wires required or anything like that. So we're going to give that a shot. We're going to extend our apex up to 22 feet, widen out the base of the KAZ to 65 feet. We're going to make sure we can get it a full about 2 feet off the ground and see what we can really do now with a full-size KAZ antenna, 2 of them, and see what kind of difference that makes in our overall DX performance. Alright, so let's do a really quick inventory of the materials that we're going to need to put together our KAZ antenna. Now, I'm doing 2 KAZ antennas, again 65 feet wide by 22 foot height, and it's going to be in a kind of a squash delta, or a kind of a delta format. So, first thing I want to make sure I do is I go out and buy myself enough wire for the job. This is 500 feet of 14 gauge stranded wire I picked up from a local hardware store. You can get it at the box stores or whatever. This is by a company called Southwire. And this should be more than enough wire for me to get the job done for what we're going to do here today. I'll need my apexes, my 22 foot apex, which again, these are the Kitty Hawk telescoping fiberglass poles. And I actually also ordered, when I got these, I got a stake that you drive in about 18 inches into the ground, and then you slide the fiberglass pole on top of that stake, and it keeps it from kind of wobbling too much and kind of getting too unstable. So that is going to provide everything I need. Now, I had previously fit some carabiners, you'll see in here, onto these to use in a portable capacity. I'm going to take those off, and I'm just going to route my wire straight through the top here. I have a little eyelet at the top that I'll show you that I'll just route the wire through there. Speaking of the wire, the other thing we're going to need here is a way to connect our wire to our devices that are going to be used in the antenna. So I prefer to use binding posts, banana plugs and binding posts. So I have a set here of banana plugs. You'll see I got 4 left, 4 pairs left. That's exactly what I need for this installation. And that allows me then to use those in a very easy way on my 2 components that'll be on the antenna. One, the FLG100LN preamp, which you'll see here I have my binding post connections here that I can just put my banana plugs directly into. And then I also have my terminating resistor. This is a variable terminating resistor. I also have a fixed variable resistor as well that I can use to dial in on the variable resistor if I want to dial in the amount of resistance that I want on that back side, or I can use my fixed value 1000 ohm resistor, but I will use one of these, and again, banana plugs on the binding posts here to plug those in. The reason I use those is to make it easier to swap. You can actually unplug these banana plugs from the binding posts and take your termination end. Let's say I'm on my north-south wire right now. This time of the year, I want that pointing south. I want to be looking into Latin America. So my amplifier is going to be on the end that I want to receive in this case, the south end, the 170-degree side. My termination box here, it will be on the other side, on the north, so I can reduce the signals that are coming in from the northern side. Now, if for whatever reason, let's say there's a DX test, or it's wintertime, I want to start looking over the pole, I want to swap that, I unplug my banana plugs from these binding posts. It's very easy to do. It just takes a few seconds, bloop, right off. And now I can put my amplifier on the north end, my termination box on the south end, and I'm good to go. It takes just a few seconds to unplug and replug. You also have some other options. This is the Russian amplifiers that I purchased off of eBay. They use these kind of wing nut screw terminals here. So you can either wrap your bare wire around those. I live in an area that has a lot of salt air because we're near the ocean, so I'm going to use some terminals and some connectors here to just kind of, probably some spay terminals on here to just slide it on, tighten it up, and be good to go. Just crimp those directly on with a little heat shrink tubing and be good to go. So that's another option that you can do, is you can use these kind of terminal based ones. Here's the preamp, here's the 1000 ohm resistor. Another option that I can use here, this is a Vactual outdoor unit that I have. This goes to an indoor unit that's fed coax through with 12 volts to provide voltage to make this a variable resistor. So just like this is a variable resistor where I can control the voltage this way with the knob that's directly on the box, this works the same way, but the knob on the box is in my Radio Shack, not out where the antenna is. So I can do it remotely. So that's what this is, the outdoor unit version of that. So that's kind of the components on the actual antenna itself. You've got wire, you've got termination box, you've got an amplifier, you have your apexes that everything kind of goes up to. On your ends, I use these. These are fence posts for electric fences. You'll see they have these nice tabs in here that I can use to route the wire through. That's going to be important here in a second. But they got the stakes here at the bottom. You just kind of drive it in. You even have a little foot peg here. I'll pick these up from Tractor Supply Company. I'll again put the link in the description. And this enables you have different levels here. So if you're on uneven terrain, if you need to go high on one and low on the other, you can do that. But you have these nice little tabs that make it easier for you to route the wire through. And then on the ends, I use these little clamps to put both wires, the sky wire coming from the apex and the base wire coming from the bottom, put both wires through one of these clamps, route that on the other side of this little hole right here. That keeps it taut. So now I route my wire through, I have my clamp on the other side of this little space right here, and now everything stays nice and taut. I don't have to worry about it pulling or anything like that. I just tighten down these little clamps. I'll put the link for these. These are from Home Depot. Put those little clamps on there, tightens it down really nice, keeps everything nice and taut. So you have a full taut installation on your wire. So that's going to be one of these on each end of both antennas. The other thing we're going to do, I mentioned, I'm going to want to try to keep this about a foot, between a foot and 2 feet off the ground. I have uneven terrain, so it's not entirely easy to do that all the time. So I'm going to use one of these. This is just a piece of wooden 2x2 fence rail post that I picked up from a local hardware store. And then I have these little spacers from electric fence. And then I'll just drill a hole in my 2x2, put my spacer on there, run my wire here through it so that my wire can just sit on top of it, and that keeps it from falling down on the ground. Keeps it up at a consistent height all the way across my antenna. So that's really about it. This is for a permanent installation. This is how I'm going to install this for a permanent installation. Is to go out here right now. We're going to take down the existing KAZs that we have right now. Take those down, take down the two apexes that are up. We're going to go ahead and get our wire measured out. We're going to get our wire in place, cut those. We're going to go ahead and extend our telescopic poles out full and route our sky wire through the top of the pole, because I need to go ahead and do that before I put on my banana plugs. Once I put these banana plugs on, it ain't routing through that little tiny hole. So I need to put the wire in first, put my banana plugs on, and then I can start getting everything nice and taut and stretched out and connected up. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to do is take down this existing KAZ antenna. We have to bring everything down, remove the wire that's here now, remove the clamps and the components and everything. So let's get started on that first. Alright, so there it is. That is the main components minus the clamps and the Wellbrook and termination box. That's the antenna right there. Two spools of wire, a vertical support for the middle, two vertical supports on the ends. That's it. Alright, so here we are. This is the back corner. You can kind of see here how I kind of had to get some clear out here. This is where my old 70 250 degree KAZ ends right here. You can see the extra room I'm going to get here, and then my old KAZ on the 350 to 170 ended right over here. I'm getting all this extra room here, so altogether basically another 17 feet. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to stake a claim here with my end pole, get that in the ground. We're going to start our base wire and run it down here, probably on the second run to keep it nice and high. And then we're going to measure out 65 feet from there. So got our electric fence post here in the ground. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and strip this wire for this end. And go ahead and get a nice little bit. We're going to twist that. So now we've got our stripped wire here. So how this clamp works, I have two screws, one on each side. A screw here, and a screw here. You loosen both screws. Okay. Now I'm going to put my wire in the clamp. There's kind of dugout areas in there for two wires, which is good because that's what we need. All right. All right, now that I've got my wire in, I'm going to give myself a little slack to get to the termination box here. And we're going to tighten this down real nice and tight. It's not the last time we're going to do this on this particular clamp, but it is going to help with this part. All right, so how this is going to work, you see these little plastic holders right here. I take my wire and I put the clamp on the other side, and what it basically does now is it's not going to let this through. The wire is now clamped and tightened down against that plastic, so it's going to hold it, so it'll be nice and taut. I'm also going to reinforce this because this is a little wobbly over here on this corner. Reinforce this pole, a little bit of rope around this fence post right here, give it a little bit of kind of a guy rope effect, so it'll stay nice and taut right upright. We're going to take our tape measure and we're going to measure out 65 feet from this spot. So I'm going to go ahead and put my stake down.
Okay. Now we're gonna measure out 65 feet. And when we get to the end, we're gonna put up our other one of these at the 65.5 or so mark. Give us a little room. And that'll be our measurement out for our base wire. And then we'll do the same thing we just did here on the other end with that spool of wire. So some stuff that we just learned. So one of the things you always want to do when you're measuring these out is to also find your midpoint for your apex. At 65 feet, that was 32.5 feet. So I had to move over, because I had a tree above me at that point, I had to move over by about 4 feet. But when I was doing that, I looked and I noticed I had a little more room than I thought to move over, which meant I had more room for more length for the antenna. So I stretched out my tape measure here to 74 feet. By stretching it to 74 feet from this point over here, I realized if I can do 74 feet, that means I can make this as a 70-foot KAZ, a 22 by 70 foot KAZ, an extra 5 feet of length. So I recalculated, I put my marker down at the end, the far end, at 70, almost 71 feet for a little extra for the boxes and stuff. Readjusted, remeasured, meant I could move this electric fence post up 3.5 feet, keeps my midpoint clear of trees, and gives me a full 70-foot KAZ. It also gives me more room now for this other KAZ I'll be putting over here to be able to stretch it all the way to this fence line, because now these wires will not be interfering with each other. Shouldn't be. So I can now put my 250 70-foot KAZ up to right about here where I had the other pole. We just bought ourselves a full 70-foot KAZ. Life is good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our spool of wire. We've got it cinched down here on our electric fence post. We're going to unroll it 65 feet, cinch it down on the other fence post. We've got our 65-foot base. Then we start working on the sky wire. Here's the guy system that I've kind of put together here for the fence post here on the end. Just some polycord back to this fence post here, actual fence post. So it's got a little slack to it, which is good. I want a little give, but it can't go past that point, right? Which is good because I'm going to be pulling from that other side. So I've got my spool of wire, rope rather, and on my fence post. You can tie it off. Now I'm going to come in this side, wrap it around here, come on the other side, cut my wire, my rope. I won't keep saying that. Right there. Now we're just going to tie it. This one I'm going to tie to the main system here, so it's a nice and secured end point here. It's going to have a little bit of lean to it, which I want, since that other side is so upright and static. I want this one to be a little more leaned back. Okay. So that's going nowhere. Let's go ahead now and taut up our wire. All right, we got it nice and taut there. All right, I'm on the third rung on this one here. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to loosen my wire clamp. Out here a bit. Put my wire on. Kind of set it where I need it. Get it nice and taut, but with a little bit of give. I don't want it completely taut and breaking. All right, we're gonna have a little bit of give to it. We're gonna tighten that down now. And that's our base wire. We can cut off some of the extra if we need to, but our base wire is up. Let's go make sure that we have it off the ground on the other end. It's time for us to work on the apex. This is gonna be a tricky one. Let's see if we can make it work. Maybe this can come off of it. Maybe we thought that again. Okay. So we're good now. Alright. So this is going to be one of the keys. This is the stake. We're going to use the existing hole we already had from our previous KAZ. I'm just going to try to drive that down a little bit more with the mallet. And then this is going to slip over top of that. Let's go get the mallet. Alright, our next step is we're going to have to telescope this entire antenna out, this entire mast here out, full 22 feet. And then we're going to take our wire and we're going to cinch it down on that far end over here. And then I'm going to run the end that's going this way through the little eyelet on top of here, which you see there, nice little eyelet. We're going to feed the wire through that all the way to the other side, cinch that side down, and then make our connections, and then we should be done. Maybe I want to come back up down then. So I was turning the wrong way, I think. So when you're pulling these out, you pull it out, and then you turn it towards you to tighten it to keep it from coming back down again. There it is. Nice and taut. Down there, almost there. Down. A little corrosion on that spot. All right, so we have our full 22 footer here, and I can get it to not be in the trees here. There it is. All the way up in the trees, but not in a bad way. This is the point where I remind you that if you're working with something like this, a metal pole, fiberglass pole, any kind of pole, steer clear of wires, power lines, telephone wires, any kind of overhead kind of stuff. Not only directly above you, but even in the radius. If this thing falls onto a wire, it's not gonna be good for your equipment, so, or for you. So I'm lucky here, our electrical lines are buried. So please, 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 keep a close eye on that overhead stuff. The base wire is in, nice and taut, looking great. We've got our fiberglass apex pole extended out, ready to receive wire. So let's get that part of the process going. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna untighten my clamp here. And I'm going to actually mark my spot here with just a little piece of tape, because when you unscrew this, it's going to detighten. So I want to be able to mark where I should have the clamp up against the wire. So this is just going to remind me to avoid. Put your clamp right here. Alright. Now we're going to loosen the screws on our clamp on one side and on the other. Okay. And now we're going to take our wire. This is going to be our sky.
All right, pause. So right about here, I'm making a mistake, and I'm going to realize it here in a moment. But what I should have done first was route my wire through the eyelet of my apex and then clamped it on one side so that I can unspool the rest of it on the other end. I didn't do that. I clamped first and then tried to run this through the eyelet, which, as you know, the other end of this is a spool. Not going to work, so I had to come up with another method. But I was tired. It was a long day. I guess I could have unclamped it and tried it again, but whatever. So don't do like I did here and run your wire through the eyelet first before you clamp everything down, and you should be okay. And I'm going to realize I made a mistake right about now.
I may have just found a snag in my plan. How am I going to get this through that loop on the top of the fiberglass pole? A little problem solving. A couple of things. One, how was I supposed to get, now that I've got one end tied down over here, that spool, that tiny little eyelet on this pole, this mast? Because I can't cut it until I know how long I need to do it. I'm sure I could use all kinds of math and trig and stuff, but I'm not any good at that. So I went ahead and just laid my pole down. Here's my eyelet. Now I'm just gonna put a screwdriver right there in that eyelet. I'm gonna take my spool, I'm gonna wrap it up here all the way back down and then down to the other side and give myself a little extra room as well. Then I'm going to collapse my pole here, put it down in my spot, and then re-raise it. Alright, so after getting up on the ladder to actually take this sky wire through the trees a bit, and I had to chop down one limb, some back and forth, loosening up the clamp, tightening it on this side, tightening everything down, adjusting it down the other end. We've got everything up. The entire 70 by 22 is up now. What we're doing now is we're getting ready to finish up our connections. so we can put on our banana plugs. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm just gonna cut some of this excess off because we don't need all this, obviously. So now I'm just gonna strip, paying attention to which one's my sky and which one's my ground, because I color code it. You guys obviously do whatever you feel is best for you. I color code my stuff, so it's easier for me to kind of work with. So we're doing the sky wire right now. Red for sky. Twist off my banana plug, pull it through. This is one that you can push down the little braids onto a little terminal thingy. Then we take our top connector, push it down in, and then we screw it on. There we go. So now my connection is nice and taut. Same thing on this one. You don't want to strip back too much if you're shielding your coating here off of your wire. Makes it a little more difficult to work with. We're on the bottom wire. It's my ground. We've already done this on the other end and connected our termination box. So we are good to go there. Use my screw top here, push that down, screw it on, nice. And the last little piece here, we're going to connect. On this particular Wellbrook model, it doesn't really matter which one you connect it to, it's all pretty much the same. So there you go. Now if you make I didn't make it long enough, you can usually kind of set it up under one of these other things right here. I didn't do that this time, so I might be able to do it off of this bottom one. Yeah, that secures it. Now I just bring in my feedline, connect it up. We should be ready to rock and roll.
So it's day 2 of our KAZ antenna journey. We have our first KAZ up, the north-south wire, and some testing last night showed it is working absolutely wonderfully. Lots and lots of signals, especially towards Latin America, which is what we were looking for by orienting that towards the south. Today we're going to be doing the southwest-northeast wire and putting that into our 70 by 22 configuration. But first we have to clear out a little extra brush to give us a couple of extra feet. So let's start with that part of the process first. Workout. So we have this corner now cleared out all the way back to our back corner. So let's take another quick inventory today of what we have here for the antenna. We have our spool of wire. This started as a 500 footer, and then obviously we used some of that yesterday, so some of that's gone. I've got my termination box, which is a fixed 1000 ohm resistor. We have our Wellbrook preamp ready to roll. We have our 2 electric fence posts.
we have our Kitty Hawk 22-foot pole. I have my tape measure to use for getting this feet. We have wire cutters, wire strippers, a mallet to drive our stake in the ground for the Kitty Hawk pole, some electrical tape. I have a long screwdriver, which I will use to help with reeling my spool. A couple bungee cords to try to secure this mast if we need to the fence. And that's about it. So, let's get started. So, bit of a bummer. 63 feet, not 70, not even 65, although I could probably scotch that back a foot or two if I really wanted to there in the back over here. Push that back to the corner. Maybe get 65 out of it. So, but all the way to that back corner back there where you see that yellow thingy. Actually, I'll just go put this up here where it's at, because that spot's not going to change no matter what. I want to keep it, this is going to be a feed line for it. I want to keep it right about here, because I don't want any of this wire from this antenna being in the pathway of that wire from that antenna, even though technically they will be on the broadside a bit, but I'll have to deal with it. All right, one thing I did forget to mention in my parts list is a little bit of rope. That's what I'm going to use here, just like I did on this, to guide this to this fence post so that it won't go any further than this. It won't pull out or anything. It'll just kind of stay there. So let me let me see if I can push that other pole. All right. So quick recap. We started off, we put our electric fence post over here on the far end, on the far ends. We tied it to our tree here with a little bit of rope, and we clamped our base wire in the wire clamp and put that behind the little stopper there on the fence post to keep it taut. That allowed us to then stretch it out. We put it on our little spacers every 8 feet here. Our electric fence spacers. All the way down to our other end, where we did the same thing. We use our clamp here to tighten everything down on the wire so we can get nice and taut. We have some extra slack on the end, which we're going to be cutting quite a bit of that off, obviously. And we did the same thing here. We used a little bit of rope, so it can pull this way if it needs to. It's going to kind of jostle around, but it can't go past a certain point. So, our next step, and this is always kind of the fun part. We have to measure out our sky wire. So we're going to basically take and we're going to clamp down on one end of the spool. We're going to take the wire out of the spool, clamp it down on this end down here, and then we're going to run that all the way out to the end of our eyelet here on the top of our mast, which goes back 22 feet. And then we're going to take that and we're going to push that back through there all the way to our other side, leave a little extra slack room on the end, and then cut. And then we're going to collapse our pole again, stand it upright right here where I have my stake, which is roughly the halfway point. I think the halfway point is actually right here, but a couple feet won't make a difference too bad. So we're going to put our stake, our pole up, then we'll telescope it all the way up, and then we'll cinch down this. In theory, at that point, all we have to do is cinch down this other side, strip our wires, put our connectors on, plug everything in, and we're good to go. So let's take a look and see how easy that next part of the step is going to be. All right, so we had a couple things we had to do here. The midpoint is right about here-ish. Tried to put the center mast right here. Didn't really work out all that well, so we moved it over here, which is a little closer to the actual middle. The reason it didn't work out too well, I'm not sure if you can see it. Let me zoom up here a little bit. You'll see there's a little bit of a bend at the top of the Kitty Hawk mast. The reason for that is it's going to try to go to middle. It's going to bend it over to the middle basically with that bendy fiberglass. So it's actually, the top up there is in the middle. The mast down here is not. These are made to be in the wind, made to be in high stress situations, so I'm not worried about that. We secured our mast with the ground stake, which is underneath this blue casing, and also some bungee cables. Got this up all the way 22 feet, and then came back here in the corner and secured with our clamp. That took some wrangling, but we got our clamp secure. Now we're going to come over. We've got a bunch of extra wire here. We're going to cut off some of the extra, strip our wire, put on our amp, go on the other side, strip our wire, put on our termination box, connect our feed line here, and we'll be done. And we are done. So, take you down in here to the tree. We've got our termination box here with our banana plugs on. Goes up there, bottom wire there. Bottom wire goes all the way along the bottom of the fence line. The sky wire goes up to the 22-foot apex, which is right there. See if I can center it in the shot there in the sky. You see the wire coming up right there. Comes all the way down. Here's the bottom mounting of the apex. There we go. I left enough slack to be able to put this up on the top little holder there. Put my clips in, feed line, guy rope to keep this from moving around too much. It can bounce this way, but not the other way. So there you go. See if you can see here. You can see that apex up there. I left a little slack in the sky wire so it wouldn't snap in a high wind, which, you know, being in a tropical location, we get those from time to time. So that's it. We have fully upgraded, enhanced, and extended our 2 KAZ antennas. Yeah, it's a nice little project for a weekend. Got this one done in about an hour and 45 minutes. The other one took about 3 hours.
Now you've seen how to put together a KAZ antenna and do the construction, and hopefully you've seen it's actually not that bad. You know, it's a little bit of work to get out there, especially if you have to work around trees like I did on one of them. But it's really not hard to put up a KAZ antenna. It just takes a couple hours in your day, and you can improve your AMDX significantly with just a couple hours of investment and just a handful of parts here and there. It's really not an expensive antenna, minus the Wellbrook amplifier if you go that route, or if you go the Russian amplifier route from eBay, they're much cheaper. But you know, not too terribly expensive, small investment of time to put together. The rewards you'll be getting are considerably worth it. You're going to have huge amounts of DX pouring in. So that leads us to our final question here. Does it work? Absolutely, I can tell you it works. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of these antennas. Not only do I believe in them, but I believe in them so much I said I'm going bigger. I'm going to find a way to make these bigger in my yard and use the entire amount of room that I have available to me. So you may not be able to do a 22 by 70, and that's okay. Do whatever you can fit in there. I would say probably the smallest you probably want to go is about 10 by 40, 12 by 48 like I did. That's probably about the smallest you really want to go. Anything smaller than that's really not going to be super effective, front to back ratio and things like that. But as long as you have a great amplifier on one end, you dial in your termination resistance on the other, there's a good chance you'll be able to null out those signals you don't want, boost the signals that you do, and have a great antenna in the process. So I highly recommend everyone at least try one of these out. You don't have to build it exactly like I did. You can use trees instead of apexes, instead of telescoping poles, or you can use fence posts that you already have instead of the ones that I use. You know, whatever works for you. Find your own ways to make the construction work for you and what you have available. That's always the best, cheapest, and most effective way to build an antenna is use what you got, rather than going out and having to buy anything new. The construction techniques that I use were just based off of a couple of different iterations of trial and error and watching other people put these together and what they have done and what I was like, oh, I like that, I'm going to use that, and use that. So definitely get yourself a chance to try out a KAZ antenna if you're looking for ways to upgrade your AM/DX experience. I'll tell you, in about a 2-month span of kind of live DXing that I was doing in December and January, I added over 100 new stations to my logbook, on top of the over 500 that I already heard. But I added another 100 stations almost to my logbook, just using the KAZ antennas. I mean, those added Peru, it added Ecuador, it finally got me to Rhode Island and Vermont from South Carolina, things I could never do before. It got me Spain and Canary Islands and England and all these other things. These are all things that I had tried to do before and never could with any other antenna that I had tried. The KAZ is what got it done. So definitely recommend a KAZ solution, or if you have the room to do 130, 140 foot antenna, make yourself a DKAZ. You know, use two KAZ antennas put together. That'll be a whole other video. We'll talk about that in another video. But these are highly effective, really easy antennas to put up. They can be very cost effective if you budget it right. Yeah, I think it's something that everyone should look into. If you have the room and you have the interest in AM/DX, there's no reason why you shouldn't. If I had the room right now, I'd have 6 DKAZs in my backyard in different directions to give me every direction possible that I'd want to look at. So, but I don't have that room, so I'm not doing that. As always, hopefully you have enjoyed this video and found it to be informative and helpful. We try to put a lot of these kinds of videos and others here on the DX Central YouTube channel, so give us a like on this video and a comment if you like what you saw, if you have any questions. As always, you want to make sure you hit subscribe and the bell icon as well, so you can be notified when new videos are available, including when we go live. We are doing our live streams now, so when we do our live AM/DX sessions or FM/DX sessions, by clicking subscribe and hitting the bell icon, you can be notified when those are live. You can also make sure to follow us on Twitter. It's twitter.com/DXCentral, because we always post there first whenever we're going to be going live. That'll be the first place you'll know when a live stream is coming. From all of us here at DX Central, thank you so much for watching with us today. 73 Best of DX. Now, let's go back up here and hit the bands.
DX Central, because we're all about radio.